Okay, so you can't talk about agriculture without talking about agricultural revolutions, and there have been three agricultural revolutions. We're going to talk about two of them for this week's lessons and wait until next week to really get deep down in the weeds of what the third agricultural revolution, or the Green Revolution as it's known, is all about. So, the first thing that we need to know is that the word revolution is not used lightly. It means that it is a huge change, okay? Anytime there's a revolution, it's a complete change in what was happening before to what happens as a result of the events that we call a revolution. And so you've heard of the Industrial Revolution, the American Revolution. These words are not, the word revolution is not thrown out there lightly. It means that it changed everything. And so agriculture, the introduction of agriculture into the world is not just a minor thing. It really, really, really changed the world. Okay, so the first agricultural revolution, you undoubtedly learned about it in your world history class, particular Western history classes. You've heard the term, I'm sure, Fertile Crescent, maybe the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which is in the Middle East. It goes from Jerusalem and curves up around through Syria, then back down to the Persian Gulf, and then also the Nile River Valley in Egypt. This is a place where agriculture is easy to do because the rivers bring such fertile nutrients to the soil. It brings the water resources that are necessary. And so in these places, insofar as we measure Western origins of agriculture, these are the places that thousands and thousands of years ago, human beings first figured out how to manipulate the environment intentionally to get a surplus in agriculture. So, in chapter 11, in your textbook, you will see maps of this region of the world that shows you what exactly the Fertile Crescent is, where exactly it is, and then also the length of the Nile River Valley, where Egypt, and why Egypt was able to be such a power. Agriculture, the revolution, enabled people and states, enabled, countries as we know of today, the word country, it enabled people to build empires. If you had enough resources, enough food resources to not only feed your population and keep them going from year to year, but overfeed them so that you had a lot of people in population and you could conscript them into an army, your entire worldview changed. That food availability, the predictable food availability, enabled city-states and enabled empires to be built because you didn't have to focus your time and energy on food getting strategy. Agriculture was so successful in these early places that it really created a society where you could focus on numerous other pursuits, luxury pursuits, or world domination pursuits, or any of these kinds of trajectories for the way that your culture was going to manifest itself, was going to happen, okay? And so the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, this is the place on Earth, a hearth. This is a cultural hearth, an agricultural hearth that we first saw this kind of human environmental interaction where you manipulate the environment intentionally for surplus. And then the Nile River Valley also is one of those places where intentionally humans saved seeds, manipulated the land, created canals from the river to take river water into, branching areas out from the river deltas. Also, animal husbandry is something that you see happening in this first agricultural revolution, harnessing the power of being able to domesticate animals and keep them for human use. And it's not just the animals, the herding herding animals that we talked about with pastoralism, although those certainly are easy to collect and to keep. Herding animals are very easy to do that, but you also see other animals such as pigs, such as rabbits, such as chickens, such as all of these different things that you don't think of as herding animals that you can begin to keep and manipulate so that you have those resources on a predictable basis, a surplus basis also. And so with agriculture, it created a social stratification. It created different layers of people with different social importance within a society, the owners and the workers especially, but it also created a dominant governmental force that could overthrow and capture and pillage other areas around its major power position and dominate regions and become a colonial kind of powers. And so these are some of the major changes that agriculture brought to the world stage. And like I said, we don't use the word revolution lightly, and there have been multiple agricultural revolutions. We are on the third agricultural revolution right now, but let's not skip the second agricultural revolution, which changed things even further. So in the first agricultural revolution, we're talking about thousands of years ago, and so it was your manpower and my manpower, your elbow grease and my elbow grease, that was producing this surplus. But with the Industrial Revolution, with the first Industrial Revolution, there have been four, and we will talk about all four of them. But with the Industrial Revolution that brought about the steam engine and brought about all of the innovations in tools that can be used in agriculture to have a higher yield, higher predictability, and fewer man hours necessary, that is the second agricultural revolution, because it took your elbow grease and my elbow grease out of the equation. We don't have to work on the farm anymore. There aren't as many farm jobs anymore for members of the population. And so it really increases the social stratification. Some of us become homeless. Some of us become completely unvaluable in society, maybe enslaved, because we have no other purpose in life. We don't have any kind of special skill to offer. And so mechanized agriculture created an even further surplus, but if you weren't involved in producing it, then you had to purchase it. And so it's really an economic structure that builds up around agriculture. Ownership of land, ownership of resources, ownership of the transportation, any of the means of production, any of the means of distribution. This ownership created vast differences in wealth, from wealth to poverty throughout the world. Also, the mechanized agricultural revolution coincided with the Industrial Revolution, and so you see ships and trade happen along huge areas. And so you're not just along the Tigris and the Euphrates River anymore and limited to where the boats can take you along those rivers. You've got enormous ocean-going ships that you're able to produce, and you start to see this triangular trade pattern. You can see a map in chapter 11 about the triangular trade pattern that happened really from Africa to the New World to Europe, Europe to Africa, and back again. There's that triangle across the Atlantic Ocean for the way that goods that were produced in agriculture were traded from one continent to the next. And so you have things like the potato, which is a new world crop, the United States, North America being the new world, South America also being considered the new world because Europe was considered the old world, Africa considered the old world. And so you see crops that became, huge parts of the resources, hugely relied upon as staple resources in the food supply, like potatoes, go from the New World to the Old World. And Ireland now in the Old World is known for their potatoes, for instance, or wheat that comes from the Middle East around the Mediterranean, different kinds of wheat, wide varieties of species of wheat that was not produced in the New World. And so when French and Spanish explorers came and they brought wheat to produce here, agriculture. Corn was the staple here, quinoa, other things like this, but not wheat. So wheat is an imported crop to the new world, and so these trade mechanisms enabled further expansion and colonization, all because of this revolution of industry that was focused primarily on agriculture to begin with, because that was the most important job that needed to be done in the world, agriculture and warfare. And so you do see things like guns and cannons and things like this being invented also. But the technology was focused a lot on agriculture and food getting strategies, and therefore, in order to expand your surplus, expand your reach, you had things like those ocean-going vessels and even, railroads being laid from New York to California, for instance. If you think about that phase of American history, that's all part of that triangular trade pattern that you see happen with the Industrial Revolution focused on agriculture. Okay, and so this is the first two agricultural revolutions. This is a very brief overview. Please go to chapter 11 in your textbook and read the sections that correspond to this, and we will talk more about it and the third agricultural revolution, the Green Revolution. Very interesting stuff. We will talk about that in future videos.